first time I realized someone had been inside my apartment, nothing was missing. That was the part that bothered me. People expect broken locks or overturned drawers or footprints on the carpet. But the thing that made my stomach turn was how careful everything looked. I came home around 11 after sitting in a surveillance van for almost 9 hours, watching a husband who never cheated on his wife. And I remember standing in my kitchen staring at a coffee mug I never used. It was sitting upside down on the drying rack beside the sink. I always left it in the cabinet because it had a chipped handle that scratched my fingers. I stood there longer than I should have, trying to remember if maybe I'd cleaned it earlier in the week and forgotten. Then I noticed the microwave clock blinking because the power had been disconnected briefly. The oven clock wasn't blinking. Neither was the one on my coffee maker, just the microwave. Someone had unplugged it and plugged it back in. I remember checking the cabinets after that, even though I didn't know what I was looking for. Nothing was gone. My laptop was still on the table, camera equipment untouched, rent money still inside the envelope in my desk drawer. But the apartment smelled different, like cold air and wet concrete, like someone had stood there quietly for a long time before leaving. I barely slept that night because every small sound in the building made me picture somebody standing outside my bedroom door, listening to me breathe. Around 3 in the morning, I finally got up and checked the locks again, and when I looked through the peephole into the hallway, there was a man standing beside the vending machine at the far end. He wasn't moving. He wasn't looking at a phone or smoking or waiting for the elevator. Just standing there with his head slightly tilted toward my apartment. I watched him for maybe 30 seconds before he slowly turned and walked down the stairs without ever looking directly toward me. The next morning, I convinced myself I was tired and paranoid because private investigation work does that to you eventually. You spend enough time watching strangers and you start believing strangers are watching you back. 3 days later, I got a call from a woman named Denise asking if I could help find out whether someone was entering her house while she slept. I almost turned the case down because it sounded like another anxiety spiral. Most of the work I got wasn't glamorous. Husbands cheating, employees stealing inventory, teenagers lying about where they spent weekends. But there was something in her voice I couldn't shake. She didn't sound frightened exactly. She sounded embarrassed. Like she already knew how crazy she sounded and needed someone else to confirm she wasn't imagining things. I drove out to her neighborhood just before sunset. Quiet subdivision, identical houses. The kind of place where every lawn looked professionally trimmed and every window glowed warm yellow at night. Denise met me at the door wearing slippers and an oversized gray sweater despite the heat outside. She looked exhausted. The first thing she asked was whether I'd locked my car, not because of crime. She just asked it too quickly, like she needed reassurance about something. Inside the house, everything was spotless, except for small things that felt off once you noticed them. Family photos angled slightly toward the hallway instead of outward. Chairs moved inches away from the table like someone had stood behind them. Denise kept apologizing for sounding irrational while explaining the situation. She lived alone since her divorce. Every few nights she would wake up and notice tiny changes. A bathroom cabinet left open, curtains tied differently. Once all the shoes near the front door had been turned to face inward toward the house. She installed cameras, but nothing appeared on the footage except brief static around 2 or 3 in the morning. No signs of forced entry, no alarms triggered. the police had already checked the property twice and found nothing. She told me the worst part wasn't the changes. It was the feeling she got before finding them. She said sometimes she'd wake suddenly in the middle of the night, already knowing something inside the house had moved. I inspected every door and window myself. No tampering and no crawl space access. Attic clean. I was preparing to tell her she probably needed a security company instead of a PI when I noticed all the clocks in the house showed slightly different times. Not wildly different. 30 seconds apart. Maybe a minute? Enough that you wouldn't notice immediately. I asked about it and Denise went pale. She said she stopped correcting them because they never stayed synchronized. Every few days, one of them would change by itself, usually overnight. I remember laughing quietly because I thought she was joking. Then I realized she wasn't. She led me to the guest bedroom where she'd started sleeping because the disturbances felt stronger near her room. Before leaving, I installed 2 motion cameras facing the hallway and kitchen. Nothing sophisticated, just enough to catch movement. Denise asked if I thought someone was messing with her intentionally. I told her honestly that I didn't know yet. As I walked back to my car, I looked at the second floor window near the staircase and saw movement behind the curtain. I assumed it was Denise until I remembered she was standing beside the front door watching me leave. By the time I looked back, the curtain was still. The footage from the first night showed nothing unusual until 2:13 a.m. when both cameras glitched simultaneously for 4 seconds. Not static exactly, more like the image lost color and contrast. During those 4 seconds, the kitchen chair nearest the hallway changed position slightly. It hadn't moved on its own. It was simply in a different spot once the footage returned. I watched the clip over 20 times trying to find a frame that explained it. There wasn't one. I went back the next evening with better equipment and decided to stay overnight. Denise looked relieved when I told her. She admitted she hadn't slept properly in weeks. Around midnight, the house settled into silence. You learn quickly in surveillance work that silence has textures. Houses sound alive when people sleep inside them. Pipes clicking, refrigerators humming, floorboards expanding. But around 1:30, something changed. The house became completely still. No electrical buzz, no airflow. Even the refrigerator stopped. Denise noticed it too because she appeared in the hallway wearing that same gray sweater, staring toward the kitchen. Neither of us spoke for a few seconds. Then we heard a single knock from somewhere upstairs. Not loud, just deliberate. 3 seconds later, another knock came from directly above us. Denise whispered that she'd heard it before. Always 2 knocks, never more. I went upstairs with a flashlight, expecting maybe loose plumbing or an animal in the attic. The hallway felt colder immediately. Every bedroom door was open except the master bedroom at the end. Denise said she always kept that one closed now. When I asked why, she hesitated before admitting she sometimes heard movement inside it at night. I opened the door slowly and swept the flashlight around. Empty room, perfectly made bed, closet closed, nothing disturbed. Then I noticed the digital alarm clock beside the bed flashing 2:13, same time as the camera glitches. The second knock sounded again downstairs. I moved faster after that because something about hearing it from a different floor unsettled me more than I wanted to admit. Denise stayed behind me the entire time. We searched every room twice. Nothing, no open windows. kitchen chair had moved again. This time it faced the hallway directly. Denise started crying quietly after seeing it because she swore she'd pushed it under the table before bed. I checked the cameras immediately. Both had shut off at exactly 2:13. Battery drains happened, but both devices had been fully charged. I remember feeling irritated more than afraid then. Irritated because nothing made sense and because I could already feel the case turning into one of those stories people tell you expecting validation for impossible things. Around 3 in the morning, Denise finally fell asleep on the couch while I reviewed footage again. That was when I noticed something I'd missed earlier. During the brief camera distortion, there was a shape in the hallway reflection on the microwave door. Not visible directly in frame, only reflected. Someone tall standing near the staircase. The shape looked wrong somehow, too narrow. I paused on it for a long time before realizing why it bothered me. It wasn't facing the kitchen. It appeared to be facing the camera itself. I didn't tell Denise about it. The next week, things escalated gradually. Denise called me almost every night. Sometimes she'd wake to find lights on. Sometimes the television would display static despite being unplugged. Once she found muddy water inside the bathtub, though all the faucets were dry. I began spending more time at the house because I couldn't shake the feeling there was a rational explanation hiding somewhere beneath all of it. Maybe a stalker with access to the property, maybe Denise herself, doing things unconsciously during episodes of sleepwalking. I even researched the previous owners. Nothing unusual except an elderly man who died in hospice care years earlier. No violence, no disappearances, nothing dramatic. But the neighbor across the street told me something strange while I was checking exterior sightlines one afternoon. She said Denise wasn't the first resident to complain about noises between 2 and 3 in the morning. The previous owner had installed additional locks on every interior door shortly before moving out. When I asked why, she shrugged and said he believed someone was walking through the house at night rearranging things. The neighbor laughed while saying it, but not naturally. The way people laugh when they want to distance themselves from a story they secretly believe. A few nights later, Denise disappeared for almost 4 hours. That was the moment the case stopped feeling like paranoia. She called me around midnight whispering that she heard footsteps upstairs again. I was only 15 minutes away and told her to wait in the living room until I arrived. But when I got there, the front door stood wide open. Every light in the house was on. Denise's phone rested on the kitchen counter, still connected to the call. I searched the property twice before contacting police. No signs of forced entry, no blood, no indication she'd left willingly either. Her purse and keys remained inside. Around 4:30 in the morning, while officers were still searching nearby streets, Denise walked calmly out of the woods behind the subdivision barefoot and soaking wet. She looked confused more than frightened. She couldn't explain where she'd been. She remembered hearing footsteps upstairs, then waking near a drainage ditch almost 2 miles away. The police immediately suspected a medical episode. Maybe dissociation. Maybe sleepwalking amplified by stress. But there was one detail she mentioned privately to me afterward that she refused to tell them. She said when she woke near the ditch, someone was standing across the road watching her. Not moving, just watching. And before turning away, the person lifted one hand slowly like they recognized her. After that, Denise sold the house within a month and moved out of state. I never heard from her again except for one voicemail almost a year later. She sounded calmer, healthier. She said the disturbances stopped after leaving. Then her tone changed near the end. She asked whether I still owned the gray coat I wore during the investigation. I told her yes because it was hanging in my closet. There was a long silence before she said, "Don't wear it if you hear knocking." Then the voicemail ended. I threw the coat away that same night.